and welcome to the Agri-Tech Catalyst Round 10 competition briefing. Thank you for joining us. My name is Pedro Carvalho, and I'm a Knowledge Transfer Manager at KTN. As you know, this competition is open to UK and African organizations who want to collaborate on agri-tech projects around food chain innovation in Africa. Today, we will host 3 webinars. This first one that is focused on crop production. Then at 1 p.m. we will have a session dedicated to livestock and aquaculture, and we will finish the day with our webinar on food production. These webinars will be recorded, so if you miss something, you can always revisit them on our YouTube channel. Just a second. Yes. So the agenda for this morning. We'll start with a brief introduction about the Knowledge Transfer Network, or KTN, and just a bit about what we do and who we are. We'll then pass on the stage to Catherine Miller, Innovation Lead on Food Nutrition at Innovate UK, that will tell us about how the Agri-Tech Catalyst came to be, its aims, scope, eligibility, funding rates, etc. for this competition. After that, we will have a presentation by Sandra Dunkel, Head of Barley Breeding at KWS, to tell us about the Innovate UK funded project, Hybrid Wheat in Africa. Sandra will give us an idea of the type of project that will be funded and the type of results that are expected. After both talks, there will be a live Q&A session where we will be able to answer any questions that you may have. And we'll finish this morning event by running a consortia building session through Meeting Mojo platform and LinkedIn, but I'll tell you all about that in a minute. So, Knowledge Transfer Network, or KTN, is the UK's innovation network. We are funded by Innovate UK and others to bring together businesses, entrepreneurs, academics, governments, or underfunders to inform business innovation and research needs, to build businesses and grow technologies for the benefit of all. Our aims are to increase business-led R&D, facilitate exploitation of that R&D, and also to encourage collaboration between businesses as well as businesses and the research base. And we do that by helping companies partnering, access Innovate UK funding, reviewing grants, running events like this one. And we also do other things like special interest groups and roadmaps and international missions for the UK government. And on that note, just like to remind the ones that still don't know that there will be a second set of GCRF Agri-Food Africa virtual missions starting next week on Tuesday, the 14th of July. And it will be a great opportunity for you to find new partners to build consortia, particularly for this Agri-Tech Catalyst Round 10 competition. So if you haven't registered yet, please do so on our website. Today, so the webinars we'll have today, the first one is run by me, and then later on we'll have the livestock session run by Lucy Mather, and then we end the day with the food side of things by Simon. And throughout these sessions, we'll have Catherine Miller from Innovate UK to give us the briefing about the competition. So what are the aims of today's event? We want you to better understand the competition objectives, scope, rules, eligibility, funding amounts, and also to give you an opportunity to develop ideas, partnerships for this competition. One thing is to learn lessons from previous funded projects, answer case studies like this morning, Sandra's presentation. And later on, we'll have a consortia building session via the Meeting Mojo platform and our LinkedIn group. So hopefully you will be able to find new collaborators and have new ideas for applying for funding for this competition. How can you participate today? So you can drop questions on the chat box on YouTube, and I will make those questions to our speakers. And if you have if we are not able to answer all your questions, or if you have any private questions, please you can email support@Innovate UK to answer those, and we'll drop the link on the YouTube box. Later on, during the consortium building session, you can use the meeting module platform. So please register via the web link that is on the screen, and ensure your profile is available. You can use your LinkedIn profile if this saves you time. This will allow you to connect with partners and facilitate introductions and online conversations. Please refer to the capabilities document that we issued earlier this week, where you can find people and companies that you would like to connect with. And also, please use our LinkedIn group. And you are free to register. That's the link. Hopefully you will get that on the YouTube chat box too. So enough of me for now. I'll pass on to Catherine Miller, Innovation Lead at Innovate UK, that will tell us all about this competition. So thank you very much, and see you shortly.
Hello and welcome to this webinar on the Agri-Tech Catalyst Round 10. I'm Catherine Miller and I'm Innovation Lead for Food and Nutrition at Innovate UK. First of all, I'm going to give a very quick introduction to Innovate UK. Innovate UK is part of UK Research and Innovation, or UKRI, which aims to be a research and innovation system fit for the future. It brings together 7 research councils, Innovate UK and Research England, and together with government, we invest over £7 billion a year in research and innovation by partnering with academia and industry to fund the best research there is. As part of UK Research and Innovation, Innovate UK drives productivity and economic growth by supporting businesses to develop and realise the potential of new ideas, including those from the UK's world-class research base. We support businesses to realise the potential of new technologies, develop ideas, and make them a commercial success. I'm going to give a brief background to the Agri-Tech Catalyst and then cover the competition scope. So the UK government's Agri-Tech strategy was launched in 2013 with the aim of improving translation of research into practical application for agriculture and related industries in the UK and overseas. There was an investment of £160 million which funded 4 Agri-Tech centres for innovation and also the Agri-Tech Catalyst for translational research. This also included funding from the Department for International Development to fund projects relevant to international development outcomes. The Department for International Development has funded the Agri-Tech Catalyst since 2013 and across 9 competition rounds, funding projects for UK organisations to work with organisations in developing countries. Since round 7, the focus has been on Africa. 58 projects have been funded so far, 53 of those within Africa. And this has delivered over £20 million of grant funding across 13 African countries. Round 9 projects haven't been announced yet, but will fund a further 14 projects in Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Niger, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, Tanzania and Uganda, and will provide an additional £6 million worth of funding. We now have funding through the Global Challenges Research Fund, or GCRF, to fund further rounds, including this one, round 10. We have funded a range of projects across previous Catalyst rounds. Projects within the crop theme include a project looking to improve yields for smallholder bean production by precision management of soil, water and pathogens. Also, we funded a project looking to develop potato cultivars that are resistant to potato cyst nematode. So as I mentioned, the Department for International Development has funded the Agri-Tech Catalyst across the previous 9 rounds, and we now have further funding from the Global Challenges Research Fund to fund future rounds. This competition is round 10, and we also aim to open a competition focusing on later stage projects next year. These are the key dates for Agri-Tech Catalyst round 10. So the competition opens on the 20th of July. We have our online theme-specific brokerage events today. And then we also have an online competition briefing on the 28th of July. And this competition briefing is run by our competitions team and will go into detail around the application process and also into the project finance details. The submission deadline is 11 AM on the 21st of October. It's important just to note that quite often competition deadlines are noon on Innovate UK competitions, but these are now 11 AM, so please make sure that you submit by 11, otherwise it will not be assessed. You'll find out whether your application has been successful on the 18th of December, and projects are due to start by April 2021. The scope of the AgriTech Catalyst is broad. Projects must show the potential to deliver impact in Africa through the uptake of agricultural and food systems technologies and innovation. The scope of the catalyst includes primary crop and livestock production, including aquaculture, non-food uses of crops except for ornamentals, challenges in downstream food processing, distribution, storage and value addition, improving availability and accessibility of safe, healthy and nutritious foods, and projects must be sustainable in the context of environmental challenges and also minimise negative effects such as pollution, food losses and waste. The following are example areas within the crop theme. You could consider focusing on one of these themes, but please note this list is not exhaustive. These are just certain areas of interest. So these include speeding up development of new varieties for current and future conditions, projects to reduce post-harvest loss on farm and also throughout the value chain, control of crop pests, weeds and diseases, and increasing the value of production to smallholders. Funding for this competition comes from the Global Challenges Research Fund and forms part of the UK ODA, or Official Development Assistance Commitment. ODA is defined as flows to countries and territories on the DAC list of ODA recipients. Only research directly and primarily relevant to the problems of developing countries may be counted as ODA. So applications for this competition must clearly demonstrate that the work they propose will benefit agriculture and food systems in Africa and how they will deliver this benefit. During the lifetime of a project, it may not impact large numbers of people, but proposals must show how the project will build a pathway to future development impact. There can be benefits to the UK, so in terms of company benefits and benefits to the researchers involved in the project, but this benefit must be secondary in nature. The primary benefit has to be in the developing country that you're working with. And activities can take place in the UK, but they must clearly be for challenges in Africa and not for the UK market. I'm briefly going to cover now the eligibility criteria for the competition. So these are the key points for the eligibility criteria. So projects must be collaborative. They must include a business and as a minimum, and they must include an organisation from the UK and from one of the eligible African countries that I'll show you shortly. Projects work as a hub and spoke model, so you must have a UK-based administrative lead or project lead who manages the finances and claims funds on behalf of all the other partners. There are 3 strands: early stage feasibility studies, mid-stage industrial research and late-stage experimental development. Early stage feasibility studies must have a UK-based lead applicant, and they can be led by an academic or a business-based partner. Projects in the early stage feasibility strand can be from 100,000 to 500,000 and 12 to 18 months long. Mid-stage industrial research projects must be industry-led, so they must have an industry lead, and they can be projects from 250,000 up to £1 million and last up to 3 years. And finally, late-stage experimental development projects again must be collaborative, but these are business-to-business partnerships, so research organisations can only participate as subcontractors. These projects can be £150,000 to £800,000 and last up to 18 months. And as I mentioned previously, projects need to start by the 1st of April 2021. This slide shows you the eligible countries in Africa. So the following countries are eligible for funding: If you are an organisation outside of these eligible countries, you can still participate in a project, but you need to make sure that as a minimum you meet the eligibility criteria, which includes a UK-based partner and a partner from one of these eligible countries. The amount of grant that you can claim depends on the size of your business and also the stage of research that your project is at. For early stage feasibility studies and industrial research awards, you can claim up to 70% of eligible project costs if you're a micro or small business, 60% if you're a medium-sized business, and 50% if you're a large business. For experimental development projects which are nearer to market, you can claim up to 45% of eligible project costs if you're a micro or small business, 35% for medium-sized businesses, and then 25% for large businesses. And grant rates are the same for UK and African-based businesses. This slide shows the research partner participation rules. So for early stage and mid-stage projects, the total cost for your research partners must not exceed 50% of the total project costs. If your consortium contains more than one research organisation, this 50% will be shared between them. For late-stage experimental development projects, research-based partners cannot claim funding but can participate as subcontractors. UK universities can claim 100%, so that's 80% of full economic costs. African universities can claim 100% of project costs. Other research organisations, for example, research and technology organisations, as well as public sector organisations and charities, can also claim 100% of project costs. I'm going to very briefly cover the application process for those of you who haven't applied for funding through Innovate UK before. To apply for funding through this competition, you need to go to the Innovation Funding Service, or IFS, which is an online portal to apply for funding. You need to search for the competition you're going to apply to and then click on the How to Apply tab. Here you'll find lots of information about the project questions and the application process. If you don't already have an account on IFS, you need to create an account for your organisation. The first part of the application is on your project details, so this section is not scored. First of all, you'll be asked for a short summary and objectives of the project, including what is innovative about it. Then you'll be asked to fill in your public description. So this is a description of your project which will be published if you're successful, so make sure there's nothing that's commercially sensitive within this public description section. Then you'll be asked for the scope. So how does your project align with the scope of this competition? And if your project's not in scope, it won't be sent for assessment. You'll be then asked two further questions. Firstly, equality, diversity and inclusion. So there is a short survey just to collect data on applicants, but this isn't scored. And question 2 on the consortium. So again, this isn't scored, this is just providing a list of all organisations, contact details and addresses and the type of organisations in your consortium. There are 11 main questions in the application. So the first question is around the business opportunity. So outline the business opportunity and what the project team needs to do to successfully address it within the time frame of the project. Question 4 is on the market opportunity. So what is the size of the market opportunity that this project might open up? Question 5 is on the project results. So how will the project results be exploited and disseminated? And you need to describe the potential exploitable outputs of the project, such as new products or services, new processes or applications. Question 6 covers official development assistance. So why is the project eligible for ODA funding? Clearly explain how your project fits within the scope for ODA. You also must include a basic logic model with this question as an appendix. Question 7 looks at how your project is compliant with the International Development Gender Equality Act. Question 8 looks at the technical approach. So what technical approach will be adopted and how will the project be managed? You need to include the main objectives of the work that you're going to carry out and also submit a project plan as an appendix. Question 9 covers innovation, so explain what is innovative about the project. Question 10 is looking at risk. So what are the risks, whether that's technical, commercial, environmental, to project success? And what is the project's risk management strategy? You can submit a risk register as an appendix for this question. Question 11 is on project team. So do the project team have the right skills, experience and access to facilities to deliver the identified benefits in the project? So you need to describe the track record of the project team and explain why they're the best people to be involved in your project. You must submit a draft collaboration agreement as an appendix to this question. Question 12 looks at financial commitment. So what is the financial commitment required for the project? So you need to explain the project costs you've listed in the finances section of your application. And finally, question 13, added value. How does the financial support from this funding add value to the project and the collaborators? And what impact will the injection of public funding have on the partners involved? So here are the links to the 3 strands of the competition: early stage, mid stage and late stage. Make sure that you go to the correct link depending on the stage of research that you're applying for. We have a customer support services line, and the phone number's there on the screen, and also an email address. So please do get in touch if you're not sure if your project meets the scope of the competition. We can provide advice around that. Also, you can contact the Knowledge Transfer Network in terms of your application. So you can ask to speak to the KTN to look at how you filled in the application, and they can provide some advice and guidance on that. And the Innovate UK website link is just on there as well. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to the KTN to continue the webinar.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for your detailed and informative briefing. For the people watching this webinar, if you need further clarification, please drop us your questions on the chat box on YouTube, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session. So now I'm going to hand over to Sandra Dunkel, Head of Barley Breeding at KWS, to tell us about the Hybrid Wheat in Africa project. So thank you.
Hi, Pedro. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be telling you about our exciting hybrid wheat project in Africa. So the focus on it is to increasing the productivity and stability of hybrid wheats in Africa. So quickly, first a project overview. So the project aims are, we're trying to identify spring wheat gene pools, assess the level of yield stability, and evaluate the cost effectiveness of hybrid seed production in South Africa. The 3 partners in this project are KWS UK, Sensako, which is a South African company, and the University of Sydney in Australia. The timescale of the project is from April 2018 through to the end of March 2021. However, due to COVID, this has been extended now to 2022. So just as a quick overview, the work package 1 is for 2018. We produced about 500 test hybrids. 2019 started the global yield testing of those hybrids. And then in 2020 is the first year where we're testing the yield stability across different environments. And then the work package 4 for 2021 is the seed production trial. So we started out with the hybrid combinations in the UK. So we had close to 900. And out of those, I can show you here in this graph, on the right side, you see the seed set on the female in kilograms. So that's from 6 meter long production plots. We had close to 600 hybrid combinations in the UK and just over 100 from University of Sydney that yielded more than 0.4 kilograms of seed. That is quite important, the threshold, because that's the amount of seed we needed to then be able to plant multi-environment trials in different parts of the world. These just barely over close to these lines represent 119 males and 19 female parental lines. And here you can see in these graphs on the left side you see the females. So it would be Australian females, for example, that were paired up with Argentinian, Chinese, German, Mexican, South African, UK, or also North American male parents. And you see all the way to the right, the number indicates the unique hybrid combination. So you see we have quite a good spread of different germplasm pools represented across our hybrid combinations. So the multi-location and environmental trials in 2019 were done in 20 global locations, just around 4,500 plots in a partially replicated trial. The idea of this was to test the additive genetic value or the breeding value of the male and the female parental lines. So with a focus on Africa, we were testing our hybrid combinations in Kenya, Zambia, and South Africa. Further to that, we had also trials in Australia, Europe, North and South America, and in different locations. The whole purpose of that was to essentially assess the additive genetic effect across trials as well. So in this graph here on the right side, this is a meta-analysis of the hybrid wheat based on additive genetic variants. And what you can essentially see on the right side, where you see SA1 and SMB, and then for a bit further down, you have KYA. So those are the African locations. So you could say or see based on this graph that essentially the African locations cluster well together quite nicely, especially South Africa and Zambia. What you then can also see when you go further to the left of the graph, closer to the second loading, you see that locations like Triplo, well, basically you don't know the codes, the abbreviations for this, but these are mostly the Australian and European locations that are clustering together really well. So what we wanted to know with this is, do we actually have to go to the target environment to test our hybrids, or can we develop the hybrids elsewhere and then bring them into Africa? This graph tells us that actually the African trials are negatively correlated or not well correlated with European and Australian trials, meaning that the testing of those hybrids needs to be carried out in the actual target environment. In multi-environment trials of 2019, we also looked at the actual hybrid performance. So what you can see here are the adjusted yield of the top 5 hybrids in green, and compared that to the highest yielding inbred checks in red. So on the top left corner, you see Kenya, to the right is South Africa, and in the lower part of the graph represents Zambia. What we can see here nicely is that the Kenyan check was considerably lower yielding in tons per hectare than our top 5 yielding hybrids. In Zambia, just below that, we see a similar picture. However, the difference is not as large. And for South Africa, it was flipped around. So essentially, our inbred check was performing better in that one-year trial than our test hybrids. When we look at the predicted hybrid performance, though, the whole image changes a bit again. So again, Kenya is doing quite well. And we see now that also for South Africa, the image has flipped. So the predicted hybrid performance, in this case, we used a pedigree-based prediction for the hybrid performance. And that resulted in somewhat a changed ranking, especially, as I just mentioned, for South Africa, and essentially made the difference somewhat larger in tons per hectares for Kenya and for Zambia as well. So because this was just a one-year trial, we will validate this year, actually. So we are waiting for data from South Africa. And in 2021, we will do the same experiments again across Zambia and Kenya as well in multi-location and environment trials to validate these results and to see whether this holds true also in a second year of trial. So the further work, the future work we will have, as I just mentioned, second year of trials in Africa in 2021. That is to validate our hybrid predictions Then we will integrate genetic data for our hybrid predictions. So far, what I've just showed you before was pedigree-based predictions, but not using the genetic data. So we are genotyping all these lines currently, and with the genetic information, hopefully we'll get even much better predictions and are able to validate those in those multi-location and environment trials next year. So this will then also give us further insight into yield stability across years. Why is yield stability across years really important? Because we're trying to identify hybrids that will perform really well across years, so year after year, and not just in 1 year. And so that's also an important point to compare it to your inbred lines and to establish that what we see, that some of these hybrids are actually out yielding the inbred parents, particularly in some of these drier and harsher environments like Africa. The second part of this is that we need to test the efficiency of the hybrid production in Southern and Eastern Africa. So this means that we need to get a very good feel and estimation of the cost of good analysis for the different production strategies. One of the limiting factors for cereal hybrids in general, but particularly also for wheat, is that a cost-efficient production of hybrid seed is really a bit of a bottleneck at the moment. So we need to test different strategies and figure out what works best and what is feasible for that. So I hope that with this, I was able to give you a very brief overview of the project that we're doing with our partners across South Africa and Australia as well. And I was further asked to comment a little bit on the application process and to line out a few of maybe positive points and points that we thought there's a bit of room for improvement. So in terms of what we really like from an industry perspective, so I did get some feedback from my wheat colleagues who are actually running this project, is that the application itself is short and straightforward. So this is definitely something that we like. The focus is on business impact and commercialization rather than high impact factor publications. What I would like to mention here to this point is that we do think that publications are obviously very important and the knowledge transfer is necessary. And we do encourage publications in collaborative projects that we have with academia. However, what we do like of this Innovate UK project is that the impact is really more the focus is on a business impact, and where you have to make a project where there is a clear path from science to something that is commercial. And that is something that we think is really quite valuable, also because of the mix of industry and academia that is beneficial for all partners. So we do strongly believe that having collaborations across industry and academia is definitely an important aspect, and we find it very beneficial for everyone involved. Another point that was mentioned as a positive is that the progress is measured against milestones and deliverables that are lined out at the beginning of the project, and the underlying science, so to speak, is checked at the beginning, but not after that. So it's really quite how we essentially also would run projects for just within KWS, check the milestones and deliverables. And so it's a pretty good way of making sure that within the time given, we're actually making it to positive impact. It is a strong level of funding. It creates a very good knowledge base between the teams. Travel is encouraged for communication processes. Obviously, this has changed quite drastically over the last couple of months. But we have found that, like probably most of you as well, that with Zoom calls and webinars and etc. and video calls, actually, we can still keep up quite a good level of interaction, communication with all our partners, and we can continue our projects really well. What's also a positive is that the technology transfer and exchange between industry partners works really well. And my colleagues have mentioned that in their opinion, sometimes that works often a little bit better than in traditional projects that are led just by academic partners alone. in terms of potential points of improvement, the process between acceptance and start of project requires really a lot of paperwork, and that can be quite time consuming. And the other point that is really very time consuming is the quarterly reporting. So what happens is that sometimes that leads that reporting partners are added to the projects. In this case of our hybrid wheat in Africa project, that's not the case. However, some of the projects that has been the case, and that is accepted by Innovate UK. What that also means, though, is that that takes actually away funds from the actual work. And so this is maybe something that should be looked into. There is no standardized reporting formats or layouts, so every monitoring officer has somewhat different requirements. And imagine if a industry partner or anyone really has multiple projects going, and each of them requires a different format and layout of reporting. That makes it a pretty long and tedious process, and it's not particularly straightforward. The financial reporting interface is not quite up to standard, and what we found a bit difficult as well is that the funds for non-UK partners cannot be paid directly from the UK. So that makes it just a little bit more complicated on how to have the international partners on board as well. And the last point that was mentioned as well is that there is no mechanism to request another reporting officer. And with that, I would like on to some of the proposals that we came up with my wheat colleagues. So we would propose, I mean, I'm sure you have thought of this before, but an automated reporting process would be really quite helpful. And so that would just mean that there would be standardized reporting formats that would be sent automatically to the officer together with the financial reporting. And standardized reporting templates could be automatically generated, that which includes deliverables, etc. And they would just be automatically loaded in a template. So you can, for example, imagine it's an online interface where you have drop-down menus, you can click on what you're doing, and where it's just automated, automatically generated, and with boxes to type in things. So it would just be much, much quicker and straightforward, especially if someone has multiple projects. Then another proposal would be to maybe consider moving to 6-month or annual monitoring meetings instead to just reduce that reporting workload. I think from our perspective, that's the one thing that seems to be quite a lot of work involved for us, which is that reporting part. And that's the feedback I got mostly from my colleagues. But overall, we are really quite happy with these projects, and we're super excited about our hybrid wheat in Africa project, and hopefully we'll have really good results to report about next year. And with that, thank you very much, and I'm happy to take some questions in the Q&A section. Thank you.
It was very interesting to know about the work KWS has been doing across Africa within this project, and your views and experiences in working with Innovate UK funding. We'll now start our Q&A session, so let me remind you how this will work. So you can drop your questions on the chat box on YouTube, and I will ask them to our speakers. So let me ask our first question to Catherine. So, Catherine, can you please clarify when an academic lead is possible, if that is possible?
Yes, I'll give sort of a bit of background on the 3 different strands of the competition, because there are slightly different eligibility rules for each of the 3 strands. So there's also a little bit of a complication in that we have an administrative lead or a project lead, and then we also have a technical lead. So for early stage projects, an academic partner can be the technical lead, so they can lead that project because these are projects that are earlier on in terms of the technology. For mid-stage projects, the technical lead has to be an industry partner because these are industrial research, industrial driven projects. And then for experimental development, the later stage projects, academic partners can't take part in the project as a partner, but they can be subcontractors. So if there's a need for an academic partner to be involved in terms of a specific part of the project, they can be subcontracted to do that. So that's the technical lead. The administrative lead, this is the lead that will manage sort of putting the application through, so actually uploading the application and also managing the funds, so transferring the funds to the other partners in the consortium. And an academic partner can be the administrative lead for early and mid-stage projects, not for late-stage projects, because these are business-to-business projects.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. I have another question for you. Can the business partner be in Africa for these calls? Can it be?
Yes.
An African partner? Okay.
Yeah. So the idea of this competition is for them to be sort of a UK and Africa partnership. So you need to have an organisation from the UK and an organisation from one of the eligible countries in Africa. The business, if you're, for example, having a consortium which has a business and an academic organisation, you could have the business based in Africa and the academic institution in the UK, or the other way around. Okay,
that's perfect. Thank you. I have a question for Sandra, my own. I'm crop physiologist by training, so there's a lot there that is interesting. Why do you think Australia and the UK results are quite similar, how the hybrids perform? What locations were your colleagues using?
It's quite an interesting. Question, right? So it's the additive genetic that we looked into there, and to be fair, some of the locations in Australia. As I've worked in Australia for a couple of years as a wheat breeder, and what I've noticed during that time is that not all of Australia is just red dirt and nothing grows in it. So there's actually quite a lot of really good fields and good soil. And so I would say if you get to a relatively maybe a drier year in the UK and you have, it's just that can happen. That we do have locations that are relatively well correlated. Sure, you would have probably assumed or thought that maybe some of the African locations would be better correlated, let's say with Australia, because of the similar climate. But it's really just, it comes down to the location, the year, the environment, and I will be quite interested to see that graph next year. So that's one of the points as well. Why in breeding we do like to have multi-year trials, because just 1 year gives you this picture. Maybe next year we see something different. So it's really quite a G/E and year effect that we see in that as well.
Okay, thank you. And another question on, you've done how many trials? I can't remember, but you've done quite a big number of trials in Africa across 3 different countries. How easy is to find partners to do field trials in Africa? Because I know that some of our collaborators have problems in finding people to do those trials.
That is honestly a question that I've not been in that program myself. So I'm quite happy if whoever asked that wants to get in touch, and I can revert that question to my colleagues who have set up.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll send you an email and to have access to some of those companies that do field trials in Africa. I have thank you very much, Andrew. I have another question for Catherine, and is, can the technical partner come from outside Europe and Africa?
Yes, so the technical partner, or any partner really, is not limited to UK or Europe and Africa. It can come from outside of those areas, but you still need to meet the eligibility criteria. So if, for example, you had a partner from, say, Germany, you would still need to have your UK-based partner and a partner from an eligible African country. And obviously the work has to be for the benefit of the African country that you're working in.
Okay, another question for you. If if you have a product already, but are looking for possible applications of that product to develop its potential, will this be an eligible situation?
So this competition, it's a research and innovation competition. So you need to have an element of innovation. So if you already have a project that's been developed and you're just looking for a market for it, then that wouldn't be eligible. But if you have a project around, potentially developing a product for a different application, that could potentially be in scope. So if you have a specific idea, what I would say is if you can put forward sort of a simple one paragraph on your project idea, send it through to the support line at Innovate UK, which it's actually on the screen now, then you can ask for sort of an opinion of whether it would be in scope or not. So we can always do that sort of on an individual basis, but you need to have an innovation project.
Okay, thank you. And another question for you. So if yes, how many applications can an academic partner have if they are the technical lead on an early root project? Sorry.
Good question. I will have to double check and I'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you. And can a consultancy lead and a local partner collaborate with a UK company? So
I guess in a collaboration, you need to justify why you're including a specific organisation. So they need to have a specific role within the project. So it depends, I guess, what that partner's going to be doing.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a bit vague, but again, if you have a specific situation, send it in and we can review it.
Okay, so another question for you, Catherine. Sorry, there will be £2.5 million available across the 3 strands. Do you have any idea how many projects will be awarded per strand in this round?
We don't have a specific number that we will award in each of the strands. That's because it really depends on the number of applications that we get and the quality of the applications. So in the last round, for example, round 9, we funded 8 early stage projects and 6 mid-stage projects. And we haven't funded any of the later stage projects because they haven't been at a high enough quality, so they haven't scored well enough to be funded. So it really depends what comes in.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Sandra, I have a question for you. Just about the trials that you currently have in Africa, were they affected by the pandemic, or are they still be able to carry on going?
So that's part of why we are doing another round in Zambia and Kenya in 2021, because we couldn't really get in there at the moment. So okay. I would say to some extent it has been somewhat affected, yes.
Okay. And the South African ones were still.
We did have South Africa this year, so that worked out. That worked out okay.
Cool. No, thank you very much, Catherine. Again, can not-for-profit organizations partner with private sector or social economic ventures?
Yes, they can, but you need to still meet the eligibility criteria. So yes, you can take part. NGOs and public sector research organisations can take part, and they will be 100% funded. NGOs can also take part as non-grant claiming partners. So, for example, you could have an NGO that wants to take part in the project as part of the delivery. So you can still do that as well. But there's different eligibility criteria on the 3 strands. If you have a look at the 3 strands and specifically on the NGO and public sector research organisation part, you can read more about that.
Okay, thank you. We have another question for you, Catherine. So, can an academic partner needs to apply through GES in addition to the application through IFS submitted by the business partner?
Yes, so the application process for this competition is through IFS, or the Innovation Funding Service, but UK registered academic organisations have to also apply through GES. So that's because UK research organisations will get some funding through other means to sort of allow for their overheads. So yes, they do need to apply through GES as well. And we as Innovate UK don't see that application, so you need to make sure that anything that you're including in that form is included in the application.
Okay, thank you. And can you explain us a little bit more about the difference between early, mid, and late stage projects, please?
Yeah, so early stage projects are really sort of feasibility projects. So taking an idea and actually looking at whether it is an idea that you can potentially commercialise. When you get to sort of the mid-stage industrial-led research, this is about actually trialling this, looking at potentially building prototypes and actually seeing if it will work in a real-life situation. And then experimental development is getting that more into sort of commercial reality, so actually implementing it in the situation where it would be used in a commercial sense. And there's definitions and examples on the website as well, which I can link to in the YouTube chat.
Thank you. And are commodity crops covered by this call? I would think so. But...
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think we have more questions at the moment. I'll wait a few seconds, and if not, I'll pass on to the consortium building section.
I can just mention, Pedro, do you want me to just quickly mention the numbers of applications that was asked previously?
Yes.
So any one organisation can be the lead applicant or technical lead on one application, and then they can collaborate in a further 2 applications. If a UK business is leading on an application, they can also collaborate in up to 3 applications. And I think the original question was around academics. So yeah, academics can collaborate in any number of applications that they want.
Okay, thank you. Just let me okay, do we need to get a pre-prepared application template as in previous rounds?
So I think this is possibly referring to the application process. So actually, the application process has changed slightly. So a couple of rounds ago, we had a process where you had to download the forms, fill them in, and then re-upload them. We don't have that anymore. We've moved on to the Innovation Funding Service for this competition. So you can now go into the IFS system online. You'll see all the guidance for each question. You can fill in parts of your application, you can save it, log out, and you can go back in. So you don't have to fill in that one template anymore.
Okay, thank you. I have a few more questions for you. They are coming. So what percentage of cost can be requested for if the lead is a non-profit UK company and the implementation partner is a for-profit African company?
So not-for-profit sort of NGOs and charities and public sector research organisations can apply for 100% funding. African businesses can request grant on the same rates as UK businesses. So that was on one of the slides previously, but it's 70% for small and micro businesses, 60% for medium, and 50% for large businesses. That's for the early and mid stage, and then the grant rates are lower for the later stage projects.
Okay. So someone, one of our attendees is interested in working with an African country that is not on the list. So what extent of partnership with a country on the list would need to be, we would need to have to gain support?
So you need to have a genuine collaboration with a partner that is from that eligible country list. So you can't simply work with, have a UK partner and then have an African partner from a non-eligible country and just have sort of a token partner in an eligible African country. You can't do that. It needs to be a genuine collaboration, and the benefit needs to be in that eligible country that you're working in.
Okay. And again for you, so are African academic partners required to apply through GCRETS?
No, so the GES system is just for UK academic organisations. So if you are an African academic partner, you apply as a research organisation through IFS. You don't need to go through that GES system.
Okay. And a final one, wait, is, yeah. So can you start at the mid stage, or do you need to start at the early stage? I guess you can, but.
Yeah, you can start at mid stage or late stage, or start at early stage. It's up to you. You don't have to go through each stage. It depends where your project is at.
Okay. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are now running out of time, and we shall move on to our consortium building session now. So I would like to thank again our speakers for the effort and time they've put in preparing these presentations and answering our questions. And as I've told you before, this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, so you can revisit. If you have any clarifications that you need, you can also drop your questions to support@Innovate UK. So moving to our consortium building session. This session aims to help you find potential partners, and you should refer to our capabilities document that we've sent early this week, where you will be able to find partners and companies that you would like to collaborate. Over 350 people, I guess now over 400, over 350 people registered to the 3 webinars we'll have today. So potential to find a partner is huge, and you shall use the meeting module platform. You can register. I guess we dropped the link on the YouTube chat before, so you simply can register it and put your organization website details there. And once registered, this tool will allow you to search for and connect with partners. In the first instance, you can organize virtual meetings and online conversations. And again, please use the capabilities document that we issued early this week to identify people you would like to connect with. The meeting module platform will be open today until 6 p.m. and you will have 15 minutes meeting slots available to book. And we'll open that platform again on the 20th of July from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And please use, if you so wish to, please use our LinkedIn group. We haven't, if you haven't already done so, the link is there. Detail is also included within the joining instructions that we've sent early this week. A bit of background about this group. We initially set it up to facilitate conversations for Agri-Tech Catalyst Round 8 and proved to be quite successful in supporting collaboration and engagement. Currently, we have over 400 members in this group. So again, potential to find collaborators is quite big. So this is the page, our LinkedIn page, and on the top left corner you can see our colleague Lucy that will present the next session at 1 p.m. on livestock and aquaculture. So again, both links for the Meeting Mojo and LinkedIn groups are on screen. So please use them, and thank you very much for attending this webinar. Bye.